September 13th, 1931, on an island in the Irish Sea, former traveling piano salesman James Irving has moved his family to an isolated farm on the western side of the Isle of Man. What happens next is the beginning of a legend that will continue to be talked about and written about for the next 90 years. Tim R. Swartz is one of these writers, and he is with us now to reveal the legend of Gef, the talking mongoose.
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is right. I need you. Then live to send the innocent to their death? Is this justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right. So we have with us, let's see, we're missing Chris there on the screen. I'm not sure what's going on. Hey, there he is. All right. Producer slacking here.
He was eating.
What's going on? Hey, so everybody at this time, we want to welcome in Tim R. Swartz. He is the author of, I'm going to bring this up on the screen here so everybody can see it too. He is author of Gef, the Talking Mongoose, the Eighth Wonder of the World. And I'm going to bring that up here so everybody can see that. Tim, how are you, sir?
Hey guys, great being with you tonight. Sorry for the problems. I've got thunderstorms going through my area today. That's causing delays and all kinds of internet problems. So hopefully I'll be able to keep up with everything. But thanks for having me on tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Hey, just kind of a little banter right quick before we get started on the topic. Austin wants to take a trip to Indiana. What's one of the destinations he must go see?
Oh my gosh! Well, it all depends what he's interested in. You just missed the Indianapolis 500. Which I mean, if you're into car racing, it's that's the thing to see. But I mean, really, if you go like to the far northern part of the state, you've got Lake Michigan. So I mean, if you like swimming or boating or activities like that. And then, of course, the capital of Indiana, Indianapolis. I mean, there's all kinds of things to do there. If you like bar hopping, plenty of that, in Indianapolis.
I'll tell you, my cousins were just down from my mom's wedding, and they're from Indiana, and like the Gary, Maryville area. And I was like, if I go up there and visit you guys, what can we do? We're like, well, we can take you like to Walmart or something. I'm like, that's it? She's like, yeah, that's it. And then I started looking it up. I was like, there's a lot of stuff you can do in Indiana. What are they talking about?
Yeah, there really is. I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, if you're into, like hiking or fishing or any other kinds of, things like that, there's just all kinds of fantastic, and beautiful locations, that you can go to. I mean, my daughter and I mean, we went kayaking last week on the lakes and rivers, and right now we've had a lot of rain here, so it's almost the equivalent of whitewater kayaking.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell, like I said, what it is in his bio, it says he's an Indiana native, and that's kind of where, yeah. So that's where, if you haven't figured that out, yeah. So, producer, videographer, award-winning, from award-winning television programs, number of books, including the one we're talking about, Jeff the Talking Mongoose. You've got, one of the ones like I really wanted to get, especially afterwards, is the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, and then also the Admiral Byrd. I think I'm trying to remember Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles. Yeah, there's a couple that I'm really interested in, and so, but the one that we're here for, and everybody, I'm going to say I'm late to the game on this for anybody that hasn't heard about this. I just, for some reason, Mark Eddy, he mentioned this to, he's like, about Jeff Talking Mongoose. I'm like, get out of here. A talking mongoose. He goes, no. And I'm like, I go, is that real? He goes, oh, it's an amazing story. And so I looked into it, and that's when we reached out to you. It's like, we have got to talk about this. And I'm going to give a plug. Ann and Renata, Frightfully Good, they talked about this very subject Monday night and brought it up. And they even showed the picture of your book on there, and they're from Australia. Cool. So they kind of gave you a plug without realizing that we were going to have you on. And so I mentioned it to her. Yeah. So I mentioned to her, just, so it was crazy. And then, I'll kind of read a passage here. First off, let's just start with rest in peace to your, to one of the co-authors, the piece that you had on here, that Timothy Green Beckley, right. Rest in peace to him. He passed away here. I think was it 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah, he passed away the very end of May during the Memorial Day weekend. Okay.
Wow. Yeah,
so yeah.
And he wrote when you look into let me bring this up here so people can see too what we're for any of those people that are watching along here. Here's Timothy Green Beckley right here. He wrote this, of course, a mongoose can talk, right here in the beginning. And so this is one of those real fantastic things. And what we wanted to talk, basically, like I gave in the opening monologue, here we have a gentleman, James Irving, Jim. He's a traveling piano salesman, and he decides to move the family to an isolated farm on the western side of the Isle of Man. This is a remote island. There's not a lot here. So, successful businessman, and he just decides to retire. So, and this is going to be his retirement for a farm. I'm not entirely sure. This is like out of Green Acres. You got some successful businessman that decides to go, live the farm life. And as I dealt in there, September 13th, 1931, he has a strange encounter with a creature that can only be described as learning to meow and bark like animal, and they're trying to discover this. And this is when we are introduced to the creature that would come to, and I'll let you take it from here, kind of to bring this to people, how they ended up coming into contact with this mongoose.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Irvings, along with their 13-year-old daughter, Vori. Now, the Irvings had moved to the Isle of Man probably maybe about 6 years prior to what ended up happening with them. They were an older couple. They had already had 2 grown children who had left and had started their own families, so they were just left with their youngest daughter, Vori, who at that point was 13. And it started when James Irving, the patriarch of the household, he said that one day he saw an animal out in the chicken yard that was chasing, the poultry around. So he threw a rock at it at first, and he wasn't sure what it was. It was bigger than a weasel, but it wasn't a skunk or anything like that. He wasn't quite sure just exactly what he was dealing with. But when he chucked rocks at it, it made kind of like strange noises at him. It barked like a dog, it meowed like a cat, and so I mean, he was kind of perplexed what he was actually dealing with. So shortly after that, he figured that somehow it had gotten into the house because they started hearing strange noises in the walls of the house. And I have to understand that when when the Irvings initially had bought the house, it had been empty for a while. And I mean, you're talking about just basically a stone construction, no insulation, nothing like that. Probably built sometime in the 19th century, but there's some indications that it may have been built maybe a couple hundred years even before that. Wow. So in the process of getting the house livable, he went and put like a wood paneling up to kind of act like as an insulation between just the bare stone walls. And he left probably about a 5 to 7 inch gap in between the stone walls and this wood paneling. And he figured that whatever this animal was, that it had gotten into the house and was now running around in this space, in between the stone walls and the wooden paneling. Now, of course, they were used to having vermin of various kinds, mice, rats, whatever you'd find, out there. And you have to realize that this farm was basically out in the middle of nowhere. The Isle of Man at that point was not that populated. I mean, it had a pretty good population, but where their farm was located, I mean, it was nowhere near any town or anything like that, and you couldn't just drive up to it. The nearest road was probably a couple of miles away, and then you would have to get out and then forge the path uphill to get to the house. So I mean, it was really just out in the middle of nowhere. So after they started hearing this thing running around the walls, they James tried to poison it at first, which didn't seem to work. But then their daughter Vori noticed that at times it would make various noises, like her father had heard out in the farmyard. It would bark like a dog, meow like a cat, and somewhere along the lines, one of them, James or Vori, started imitating it. How people are. It would meow like a cat, and somebody would meow back. And then it would meow back, and that's where it really started. So it then progressed almost like this thing was parroting back.
So you're saying this is a very multi-talented creature. It could do a whole lot of things.
It could, and after it started doing these things, then it also started to do what would almost be like a ghostly activity, like a poltergeist. It would throw stuff from holes in the wall. It would move furniture, seemingly on its own. So naturally, at first, they were like, well, this isn't an animal. We've got a ghost here. We've got a poltergeist. And so about this time, it actually started to imitate human speech. It would hear people talking, and then it would parrot back the speech. So if, say, like the Irvings were, in their parlor talking, it would repeat words back from the walls. And that's the thing. See, nobody ever really got a very good glimpse of this thing. Every once in a while, they would see something like maybe dart across the high beams of the ceiling. But
you can see where you'd get like the poltergeist, the supernatural, the paranormal side of it, because you're hearing talking from the walls, you're seeing flashes of something, and not really getting a look at it. So, yeah, I mean that's kind of where you heard like the sign. I think when I'm trying to remember, I think it was page 13 in the book where you were talking about. It made sounds kind of like doma, 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 blum, 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 like it was just starting to, learn how to say these words.
Right. Well, and that's what James initially said. It sounded almost like a baby learning how to talk. But it learned very quickly, and after a while, I mean, it was having like full on conversations with these people, and at that point, it insisted that it wasn't a ghost, that it was actually a living creature, and in fact, Gef, Gef, as it would later want to be called, told them that it was afraid of ghosts. That it wasn't a ghost because it was afraid of ghosts. But as I wrote in the book, so much of its activity was just like poltergeist activity. As I said before, I mean, it could
Definitely.
move furniture around, it could throw stuff from the walls. In fact, it would it could squirt water out of sections of the wall at somebody that it didn't like, and then insist that no, that wasn't water, I just pissed on you. That sort of thing.
Besides the creepy factor, this almost sounds like this would just be an absolute blast to have something that's interacting with you like this.
You make it mad, it pisses on you through the wall. You're like, oh, stop it! I can't see you. Stop. Wow, that's crazy.
Well, the thing about it also is that its voice was, I guess, just extremely creepy. As some people put it, that actually witnessed what was going on there, it sounded like what you would imagine like a small, weasel type of animal talking. It was very high pitched, hard to understand sometimes, but extremely loud. And that was the other thing. This thing could talk and scream so loud that it would actually, like shake the rafters of the house. So, again, are you dealing with some kind of bizarre creature or some kind of supernatural type of entity? The Irvings the entire time would kind of waffle back and forth on what exactly they were dealing with. Though Gef always said that no, he wasn't a ghost, that he was an actual, as he put it, that he was an extra special little mongoose. But as far as I know, there hasn't been any similar cases of talking mongoose.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not sure how to refer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this about the time it was called the Dalby Spook? Is that about the time it started getting that name?
Yeah. The neighbors were well aware after a while that there was something weird going on at the house. Naturally, Vori went to school every day, and so the way kids are. I mean, it doesn't take long for the story to get out, especially in a fairly small community like what was on the Isle of Man, that there was some kind of haunting going on at the house. And of course, the Isle of Man has a rich tradition of fairy folklore. So some of the neighbors naturally thought that maybe this was some kind of elemental type of spirit, like a fairy, a brownie, or they didn't call them leprechauns there, but something along those lines. But most of the neighbors that would actually go to the farm and listen to this thing talking, they would only go a couple of times, And that was it. It terrified everybody, and it especially terrified them when they found out that Jeff liked to wander around the island. Jeff would claim that it would hitch a ride on the bus that went through the island and would travel from household to household, stealing things or listening in to private conversations. So yeah, there weren't a lot of people who were too keen on the idea that some kind of little creature was listening it in on their private conversations and then going back home and gossiping, about the household secrets.
Yeah, so this is like a tabloid, a four-legged tabloid that's running back and forth. Loads up on the gossip, comes home, and it's story hour at home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and on top of that, it would steal things too. It would steal things from the neighbors, and then leave them at the Irvings and say, and proudly announce that, hey, I brought you guys something. And usually it was just like, little things, knickknacks and things like that. And then the Irvings would have to try to find out, where this stuff came from. But on top of that, if Jeff got angry at, say, something that had heard a neighbor say about what was going on, because you have to understand, the Irvings were not native to the Isle of Man. They lived over in England and then moved to the island, so they weren't native, and so they were always treated differently. People didn't trust them, and they thought that the Irvings were. Well, it's like you said earlier, in the program, it was almost like a Green Acres type of situation, because before they moved to the island, I mean, they were fairly well off, but James put all of his retirement money into buying this farm, thinking that he was going to be a gentleman farmer, which is, he would hire workers to do all the work. And he'd sit around and smoke his pipe and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, it didn't quite work out like that. And by the time that Jeff showed up, the farm was not doing that great. So then naturally, the neighbors just always treated the Irvings differently. So then when they had this thing, this talking mongoose or ghost or elemental, whatever it was, I mean, the poor Irvings, I mean, they were even more on the outs with the local community.
Oh yeah, I was looking at it, especially when you're already kind of viewed as an outsider, and then you start walking up saying, "I've got a talking weasel creature." People aren't gonna exactly take you, and like, oh yeah, come on, tell us more. They're like, oh my God, these people are insane,
Yeah.
And one of the things like I was really kind of taken with in the story, and I'm gonna get here so I don't mess it up, was not only was the fact that he would do this for the family. He would just like bring back almost like gifts, like offering, kind of like, here's a piece of like everything. But the different things that Jeff would call James. He would actually, call him names, just mock him, and he'd throw rocks at the wife and just, throw him out there. And one of the things I thought of when I was reading it, I'm like, wouldn't this be funny if the couple just really didn't like each other and they both knew how to throw voices, and it was the husband pretending to be Jeff, the talking mongoose, to torture the wife, and the wife was doing it back at him, and it was the whole time it was just them trying to imitate the same voice.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
I wonder why they didn't take down all the boards that he had put up, so that left the mongoose nowhere to hide. That would have only made sense in this theory. Just take down the boards and. I mean,
well, and they did try that at first. In some sections they would they took it down and left like traps and poison, but Jeff just managed to avoid all of it. And in fact, at first, when they did that, Gef threatened to kill him. Not only kill them, but especially do harm to their daughter, their young teenage daughter. So they kind of quickly came to terms with Gef, not knowing if he actually was capable of doing something like that. I mean, they knew that he could kill, say, like rabbits and poultry and things like that. But would he have been capable of killing a human being? They weren't going to take that chance, and he did seem to have abilities that went beyond what a normal little animal would be. And you have to remember, I mean, this was he was maybe no bigger than a foot long, and maybe 4 or 5 inches high. Just about the size of a weasel. But he claimed all along that he was a mongoose that had been brought to the island a number of years before by a local farmer who had bought several mongoose to take care of the rabbit population, because the rabbits were out of control and eating all the crops. Later, James was able to confirm that about 75 years previously that this was true, that there was a farmer who had bought some mongoose and had them shipped from India to do just that. And Gef had claimed that he had been born near New Delhi in India. I can't remember exactly what year he said. I don't have the book right there on me. But at some point during all of this, he had reached at least, according to their calculations, over 100 years old. So again, unless you're dealing with some kind of mutant, which has been suggested, that this was some kind of mutant animal, like a one in a million type of things that was born that somehow had gained intelligence, you're probably dealing with some kind of supernatural creature. Like I said before, ghost, elemental, who knows? But which is one of the things that makes the story just so fascinating, is just all the unknown factors going on here, except it's not unknown that it actually happened.
Maybe it could have been a hybrid of something, a crossbred, something made in India. Who knows?
It could be. But again, if you go and look, the Gef, the Talking Mongoose case is so unique. I mean, before I put this book together, I spent a lot of time researching, looking for other cases that may have any kind of similarities to this one, and I never did find anything. I did find, and naturally this didn't crop up until after the book was originally published. There was another case around the same time in Ireland, I think is where it was, where again it was a situation where you had an older couple and their granddaughter that they moved into a house that had some kind of ghostly or haunting situation where the voice in the walls, again, similar situation, claimed that it was some kind of animal. But this case only lasted really about a couple of weeks before it dissipated. But similar to the Gef case, there was accusations that the granddaughter was using ventriloquism in order to hoax everything. And that's something I discussed quite a bit in the book, because back in the 30s it was still believed that people could throw their voice, that rather than using, we know now how ventriloquism works, but back then people thought that a ventriloquist could actually make their voice come from different locations. So it was suggested that Vori had somehow taught herself to throw her voice, and that's all it was. That it was, just a hoax. With Vori being some kind of super talented ventriloquist. But as I pointed out, the Irvings, they had already raised two children who were grown and moved away. So I mean, they didn't just fall off the turnip truck. I mean, they were well aware. They were well aware of all the crap that kids can pull. And parents back then were not nearly as lenient as a lot of parents are now. So I mean, no. They would have discovered very, very quickly if Vori was trying to pull a fast one on them by throwing her voice or trying to be a ventriloquist. And again, if Vori was a ventriloquist, she was a very good one at the age of 13, and if she was that good, why didn't she use those talents later on in life? Because if she was good enough that she could perpetuate this hoax for as many years as they did, and fool not only her parents but reporters, neighbors, other people who came to visit, man, she could have been really rich hitting the vaudeville stage.
I think I would have moved back to where I moved from and went back to being a piano salesman.
Well, they were already committed at that point after they bought the farm, so to speak. All of their money went into that farm. So I mean, there would have been nothing. The only thing that they could have done is that they could have moved back and maybe moved in with their older son or daughter that had. But I mean, they had their own families. Nobody wants mom and dad and 13-year-old sister moving in with them. So I mean, they basically were stuck there. And eventually, James became so fascinated with what was going on. I mean, he even kept a daily journal of all the things that Gef did and said every day. And I mean, and in the book itself, I mean, you can go and you can find just fascinating excerpts of just the daily stuff that this thing would do that. James would just diligently write it down. I mean, it was almost like so matter of fact, these entries. It would be like somebody just putting down what happened weather-wise, that day. Except that James was saying, well, today Gef talked from the walls and threw some rocks at people and brought home a rabbit for supper. It was that kind of stuff. Every day he would list it.
And I also was reading, did you write in your book about the person that supposedly bought the farm and they say they shot and killed it? I haven't got the book yet. Did he actually produce any evidence stating that he killed the grief?
Well, he took a picture of whatever it was that he shot, which that picture's been really hard to find. And actually, I did find it and included in the hardcover edition of this book, which we put out a couple of months ago. But whatever it was that he shot is way too big to have been Gef. It looks more like maybe a European skunk. And Vori, at this point, Vori was an adult and had moved to England to work at a munitions factory for the beginning of World War II, and she said that this looked nothing like Gef. Whatever it wasn't Gef. So
now, is that the picture I've got on the screen?
No, that's one of the pictures that Vori actually took herself.
Okay.
They had gotten the attention of Harry Price, the psychic investigator from England at that point. And in fact, my book also includes Harry Price's book, The Haunting of Cashin's Gap, which Timothy Green Beckley, who sadly passed away not too long ago, he managed to find a PDF of this book, because this Harry Price's book, they wrote it, maybe published 500 copies, if that didn't sell well at all, and then it was never republished. So for Mr. Beckley to have been able to find a PDF of this book, which really hasn't been seen since the 1930s. I mean, it was just a major coup for us to be able to include this in my book. But Mr. Price had actually given Vori a camera with film plates in it, so that she could try to get some pictures of Gef. Gef had told her that if she got a camera, that he would pose for her. And so it turned out that Gef's idea of posing would be to run very fast across the top of this fence, and she would have to try to snap a photo. Picture. Yeah, as quickly as you can. And you got to remember, 1930s cameras weren't nearly as good or as fast. Especially an inexpensive one, probably that she was given. But she did manage to capture, several photographs of something. And of course, naturally the skeptics, say, oh well, it's just like maybe a stuffed toy or some. Like her mother's first stole, something like that. And again, I can't imagine any mother who would be very happy if their kid took a fur piece, and take it outside to try to hoax a picture. And
this is a sketch.
Yeah, that's a sketch, right?
Yep, this is a sketch of what Gef
supposedly look like. Now, according to James Irving, after Gef saw this picture, he said, "I look nothing like that." He said his tail. He said his tail didn't look like that. He said it made him look like a camel, as he put it. But one of the things that is true about this photograph, allegedly, is that, or the sketch, is that Gef's paws were more like hands rather than an animal's paws. He had like little fingers. Margaret, James' wife, said that Gef's hands were like a doll's hands. They weren't covered in fur, and looked almost human, albeit very, very small. There is a photograph in the book, it's hard to see, where James Irving is standing on a bed in Vori's room, and he's pointing at a section of the wall where he says that you can see like Gef's little hands coming around the edge. It's difficult to see, like in this old black and white photograph, but you can see, something, that looks almost like, little fingers coming around the edge of the paneling. And it was because of Gef's strange little hands that he was allegedly able to do some of the strange things that he was able to do, like throw things or pick stuff up, steal things. Again, rather than being like an animal's paws, it was almost like he had like a primate's type of hands, like monkey or something like that. Yeah, that's the photograph there. And
you can see right up here. You can see these fingers.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to tell you, but yeah, that allegedly was Gef's little paws, sticking around there. But again, if he was this little tiny creature, he was really strong because again he could move chairs and furniture and things out in the barnyard, bales of hay. Early on, he would hide bales of hay that was needed by the livestock, and then Jim would have to wander all over the farm to try to find where Jeff had hidden this stuff. Some stuff disappeared and was never seen again. So again, very poltergeisty like.
And that was page 167 of your book, by the way. Oh, you got that photo. Right. That's on page 167. It's like I forgot to mention that.
So I wonder, was he taking gifts to other people's houses as well as bringing them back to the family? Because his stuff came up missing and they never found it. That's crazy. I need my doggone shovel. Where'd it go? The Mongoose got it.
Yeah, the Mongoose got it. Well, I mean, and he would allegedly he would hang out in the at the bus station garage in the nearby town and steal food from the workers' lunch pails. And so, yeah, just, it was another thing that didn't endear him very much because allegedly, these workers would go to their lunch pails to have lunch, and if the food was still there would be like big bite marks taken out of it, which again is very much like a poltergeist or an elemental type of creature, because there's especially with the ideas of like fairies and brownies and stuff like that. You have these stories of households being plagued by these things eating the bread, especially since bread was such a staple of a household, where they would hollow out freshly baked loaves of bread. So, you'd pull the bread out of the oven and slice into it, and it was completely hollow inside. Jeff didn't do that, but instead he would just take big bites out of things and then put it back. Yeah.
Again, he's a jerk.
Yeah. Oh, very much. It's almost like living with a petulant 10-year-old child.
Wow. Man, he's got bologna today. I don't like bologna. Let's see if I can find the turkey sandwich.
Right. Well, bacon, chocolate, bananas. That was his favorite stuff. Of course, now they didn't get bananas very often, but if bananas ever did come into the household, like as a treat, a large portion of it had to go to Jeff. Or else he'd be unhappy and throw a tantrum, and he would throw, I guess, huge tantrums. Some of the neighbors who actually would go to the farm and stand outside because most of the time Jeff wouldn't allow strangers in the house, and if they did come into the house, he would disappear. So there was one report where a neighbor could hear Jeff from he was inside the house, they were outside, and he was screaming and cursing, and Jeff had a very rich vocabulary of curse words, which was pretty scandalous, at that time. But they said that they could hear this voice, this high-pitched voice, screaming at the top of its lungs and cursing like a sailor for whatever it was that he was honked off about, at that time. And that was something that was reported quite a bit from people who did actually manage to hear him talk. Was that not only was he very quick to anger, but that he had no qualms about cursing you up and down, and your parents and the horse you rode in on.
Maybe he was mad about the banana. He didn't get the banana, and he was mad. Wow.
Well, he, like I said, bacon. He loved bacon. He always wanted to eat bacon, and of course, if he would kill poultry and rabbits and things like that. But most of the time, when he would kill, say, like rabbits, he would bring them to the Irvings, for their meal. Because of their financial situations, sometimes the only meat that they could get would be rabbits. The poultry, chickens, things like that. They needed those for the eggs, or if say like a chicken was slaughtered for the meat, a lot of times that would be sold rather than eaten for the household. So that was one of the things that James Irving wrote about, was that Gef, despite the fact that he had a temper and threatened them often, also seemed to have a soft spot for the family, and would kill rabbits almost on a daily basis, so they would have something to eat that night.
That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, it's a fascinating case. It really is.
Well, and just the fact that it started bringing in the paranormal investigations of that time. I mean, to have some. I mean, Harry Price, if I'm not mistaken, he was one of the more famous of that the paranormal investigations of that time to come over there. Right. So that was a pretty big deal to have him take that seriously.
Well, Harry Price didn't take it that seriously.
Oh, okay. So I misunderstood.
Well, okay. Now, he was fascinated by the case, and before he actually was able to make it to the Isle of Man, he sent several other people to investigate for him, and those who did manage to actually convince Gef to either talk to them or do something for them came away convinced that there was something unusual going on. But when Harry Price did manage, and he did go to the Irving's farm several times, Gef refused to participate. Gef disappeared both times, and in fact disappeared for like weeks at a time. Even after Price had left, Gef disappeared, and the Irvings thought, well, that's it, he's gone. And then eventually he would show up again. But Gef never showed up when Harry Price was there. And that convinced Harry that there was some kind of hoax going on. He wasn't sure how. And he didn't think that James Irving, the father of the household, was responsible, because James was so earnest about everything that was going on that Harry was pretty much convinced that that James thought that this was a real phenomenon. So I mean, he suspected that once again that maybe Vory was somehow perpetuating a hoax. But again, I mean, this was something that happened almost over a 10-year period, which is almost unheard of in a normal haunting poltergeist case. You have a handful that lasts that long, but most of them peter out, after about a few months to a year. And then you had like Nandor Fordor, who was a very well-known parapsychologist at that time as well. Now, Nandor Fordor actually was a student of Sigmund Freud, and so he was convinced that there was probably some kind of, that it probably had some kind of paranormal roots, but that there was maybe a psychological process going on there, where maybe you had a family that was unhappy, just unhappy living there, unhappy with each other, just unhappy, and somehow their combined unhappiness created almost like a tulpa, type of thought entity that manifested itself as Gef. But when Mr. Fordor visited the farm, once again, Gef refused to participate. There was, he did experience a few kind of like paranormal poltergeisty type of things. Rocks would hit the window when there was nobody outside, and some like chairs moved around. But other than that, Nandor Fodor went away disappointed as well. He even sent a letter to Gef before he arrived, saying that, hey, I hope you'll stick around when I come to visit you, and even left him chocolates, to try to coax him out. But Gef wouldn't have anything to do with him. Nandor Ford, or Harry Price especially, Gef told the Irvings that Harry Price was a non-believer and that he was just coming to try to prove that it was a hoax. And that seemed to be a big thing with Gef, is that he thought that that nobody would believe what was going on, so why perform for the non-believers, when it would have just been the opposite, actually. I mean, if some of these major faces like Harry Price, if Gef had even just said a few words, or peed from the ceiling on him or something like that, I think that they would have come away a little bit more convinced that there was an actual phenomena going on.
Yeah, so it's. And then basically, I mean, short of the fact that you had, the report, that Leslie Graham had killed, Gef, it's like was there really a definitive, I'm trying to think, it's not, result isn't a thing, fate for Gef, or is that still part of the major mystery? Is like, what happened to Gef?
That's part of the major mystery. Vori Irving, after she moved away, well, even before she moved away, she said that eventually, because Gef would go away on his little trips and would stay away for a few days to a few weeks and then come back, and she said that these disappearances would last longer and longer until eventually he just never came back. So by the time that she was a young adult and had left home, Gef had not made an appearance for quite a while. When James Irving was in the process of dying, their oldest daughter, who had never believed what was going on there at the farm, she had always was convinced that somehow the younger sister, which, I mean, that's natural with siblings. She was convinced that the younger sister was, somehow had managed to fool their parents for all these years. She came to stay with James and Margaret while James was dying. And she reported to have experienced several kind of bizarre poltergeist type of experiences. She said one time that the fireplace broom, which was setting on the mantle, suddenly started moving around on its own. Things like that. Though she never heard the voice of Gef, and by then it was almost like Jeff's personality had faded away, though the energy there did seem to be still some energy remaining in the household. But by the time that James Irving passed away and Margaret sold the house, everything had pretty much stopped at that point. But Vori Irving, years later, a reporter for Fate magazine managed to track her down, and she was in her 50s at this point, and she had did everything that she could to try to stay out of the spotlight about what had happened. But this reporter had managed to track her down, and she did agree to an interview, and she said that, yeah, everything did happen. It wasn't a hoax. She goes, yeah, at this age, I would tell you if somehow, me or my mom or my dad had perpetuated a hoax. But no, everything that happened had actually happened. And then she went on to say that she wished it hadn't. She said that Gef had ruined her life. She said that she said she never got married because she was afraid that if a potential suitor had found out that she was the Dalby spook, that nobody would ever want her. And then when she did pass away, I mean, she remained unmarried. But yeah, she said that Gef was the worst thing that ever happened to her in her life.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that quote. It's like, I do wish he had let us alone. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, as we're winding down here, it's I wanted to bring up Amazon for you too. It's just I'm going to share this up here on the screen for everybody, so that way they can go here. You've got follow him on Amazon, and then he's got a whole list. I think 1, 2, 3. There's at least I think 9 or 10 books on here, unless I'm missing a couple.
At least,
yeah,
at least 9 or 10.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a couple. Yeah, you probably. How many do you have on there? I mean, I would say 20, 30.
Something like that. Yeah. Because I've helped other, authors write books, contributed chapters for other people's books. Myself and Mr. Beckley, I mean, we would put a book together and we'd bring in a number of authors to contribute pieces, for a book on the same subject. So, yeah, I mean, there's, 20, 30, who knows? I've lost count at this point.
Yeah, but this book, honestly, Gef the Talking Mongoose, the Eighth Wonder of the World. This has multiple things. Like you said, The Haunting of Cashin's Gap by Harry Price and R.S. Lambert is in there. It has that from Timothy Green Beckley. You've got several things. It is a well written book. It's actually a real pleasure to read. I highly recommend this for people, and it's real easy to go. I just showed you right here. You can simply pick it right. $8 is downloaded to Kindle right now. You can just start reading it. It does for those that require them. There are pictures, so you can see these things. So for those of us that it's I don't think there's a scratch and sniff tome, but it's definitely there's definitely photos. But so I'm going to give you the floor here, sir. If there's anything else you would like to plug as well, let's go for it.
Well, Gef the Talking Mongoose, that's one of my favorites. We also actually have it in a hardcover edition as well. Now, Amazon, charges out the wazoo for the rights to have it in hardcover, so we have it down about as low as we can. But I'm really pleased with how well the hardcover book looks as well. And as you can go to Amazon, type in my name, Tim R. Swartz, Timothy Green Beckley, Sean Castile. All of our books will come up. We've got books on practically anything that you may be interested in from the world of the weird, or UFOs, paranormal, ghost stories, cryptid creatures. That's one of the things about all of us, is that all of these things are fascinating to us. We love to do the research on them, and then we love to write the books and get this information out to everybody else. As well, my website is conspiracyjournal.com. Right now, we've kind of taken a hiatus because of the death of Timothy Green Beckley, but we're trying to get ourselves reestablished and to get that all updated. But right now, all of our books are available on Amazon, so take a look.
Yep, and I just had that here, bam, right there, conspiracyjournal.com. Right there as well. So everybody go there, check that out, sign up for their newsletter so you can get all the information, what they've got going on. You got links right here to all the books down here. I mean, we said, I would love to have you back on. There's a couple of these that I definitely like. The Lost Journals, Nikola Tesla. As soon as I saw that one, I'm like, oh, I think I know the next show I really want to have you on for. So, but Tim, I really appreciate you coming on. This was an absolute blast. I mean, I didn't think we could get an hour out of Gef the Talking Mongoose, but it's amazing how quick that went by.
Oh yeah. Well, it's Nikola Tesla. That's one of my other favorite things I love to talk about. So yeah, if you want me back on to talk about Tesla, that's we can definitely cover an hour in no time, and hopefully. Awesome. Yeah, hopefully I won't have quite the problems that I had today with audio and things like that. Having to talk to you now through my tablet.
Oh no, it worked. It just worked fine. I said I appreciate you, going through all that to try to get on here. I appreciate that so much. But everybody, like I said, please go check them out. Conspiracyjournal.com. Go to Amazon.com. Support them. Buy the books, especially when we just talked about Jeff the Talking Mongoose. It's an amazing story. There's tons of information in there. I mean, this isn't it. It's amazing how fast 200 and some pages goes. I think it's like 257 or something, if I'm not mistaken, on the page count on that book.
Oh yeah,
it's 275. Yeah, that's pretty close. 275. I just switched it. I just transposed the numbers. So everybody. So Tim R. Swartz, sir, thank you so much. Have a great evening, and we'll definitely be in touch because we will be talking Tesla soon. So,
all right. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great night.
Have a great night.
All right. You as well.
All right. This episode is brought to you by Nanny Cakes, Nancy Burke. Go to Nanny Cakes 407 on Facebook or give her a phone call at 407-923-2898. She is going to take pity on you for having to endure our faces for the last hour, and she will give you 15% off that cake order. And this one is, you can even mention that this was a Four Beards broadcast because we forgot to point that out. Our guest had a nice beard too. and so everybody, we have new merchandise available at redbubble.com. Go Three Beards podcast on that. And we've got all our merchandise. We have a few people that have sported that. April is one of them. Joey Medea is another one that has one of our shirts. That's fantastic. We've got a mystery third person. Not sure who to attribute to that, but all three of you, thank you so much for supporting us. Appreciate it. And check us out on social media. We are rebroadcast every Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, courtesy of J&J Beard Company on Patriot Radio. Download that Zeno Radio app, and you're able to listen to us there. And like I said, click subscribe. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. Make us, make it our world a happier place, because it makes things a little easier for us to get stuff out there when we have that behind us. Everybody, thank you for watching. Stay tuned. We got the next show coming up. Everybody, Tim, thank you. Good night.
All right.
Yeah.